Emma stepped into the dining room just as the last glow of sunset slipped through the tall windows. The bistro's soft lights cast warm pools on the polished wood floor. She took a breath of the gentle hum around her and smoothed her apron. It was another busy Friday evening at Bella's table, a cozy spot known for its artful salads and creamy risottos. At 21, Emma had learned to balance schoolwork with long shifts here. Her mother had fallen ill the year before, and Emma had promised to help pay the medical bills. College still felt like a distant dream. But every tip she earned brought her closer. She moved between tables with practiced grace. A couple in the corner toasted glasses of sparkling water. 3 friends laughed over plates of bruschetta, and a small family shared a bowl of soup. Emma greeted each guest with a bright smile. Her eyes were sharp and kind, and she carried herself with a quiet confidence. She loved this job because it let her meet people from all walks of life. Sometimes tourists from faraway places sat at her tables, and she learned bits of their languages from overheard conversations. That evening, Emma's shift began in the usual way. She checked on bread baskets, refilled iced tea, and wiped down the bar. Around 8 o'clock, a hush fell over the room as the door swung open. Emma looked up and saw a man in a dark suit step inside. His hair was just turning gray at the temples, and he carried himself like a man used to rooms full of applause. She recognized him at once, Victor Reinhardt, the tech CEO whose bold bets and public challenges made headlines. Rumor had it he once wagered a designer car on a game of trivia. Tonight, his presence set every head turning. Emma felt a familiar flutter of nerves. Victor Reinhardt did not often eat at ordinary bistros, yet here he was, alone, scanning the room, as if he might make another bet. She tried to look calm as she approached him. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice steady. "Welcome to Bella's table. Would you like a quiet corner or a seat by the window?" He glanced up, and a faint smile curved his lips. "Surprise me," he said, his voice smooth and amused. He followed her down the aisle, and she led him to a small table tucked away near a bookshelf stocked with vintage cookbooks. She placed a glass of water in front of him and handed him the menu. He waved a hand as if the food did not matter. Emma felt her heart beat a little faster. She caught the curious looks of her co-workers as she returned to the bar. Minutes passed. She moved among other tables. Yet she kept one eye on the CEO. Finally, she noticed he had finished a glass of wine and was reaching into his jacket pocket. He stood up, gathering the attention of everyone nearby. Emma's breath caught. He held a small piece of paper, folded with care, tapped the table lightly, and the hush deepened. "Ah, young lady," he called, motioning to Emma. The other guests paused their conversations and watched. Emma approached, steadying her voice. "Yes, sir?" She bent slightly, respect clear in her tone. Victor placed the paper on the table and smiled broadly. "Translate this," he said, amusement dancing in his eyes. "If you can read it, I'll give you my entire monthly salary." A murmur went through the room. Emma glanced at the paper. It was covered in neat rows of unfamiliar characters, curling and looping in a style she had never seen before. Behold. Script from a land far beyond her simple life in this city. The other diners exchanged bets in hushed whispers. Some thought she would laugh and walk away. Others whispered that no one alive could read that ancient dialect. Victor leaned back and laughed, a rich sound that filled the room. "Come on, young lady," he said. "I pay $10,000 a month. That's a nice tip, isn't it?" His voice carried no threat, only playful challenge. Emma's mind raced. She had once found a tattered book on rare languages in the local library. She'd flipped through pages of strange alphabets late at night, when she should have been studying. For biology exams, those pages had felt like magic. She remembered the shape of a symbol that looked almost like a drop of water, and another that curved like the half moon. Her heart pounded as she placed her fingertips on the edge of the paper. Victor watched her closely. Emma felt every eye in the room on her. She took a deep breath. The restaurant seemed to grow quiet around her, as if the walls were holding their breath too. She glanced up at the CEO. His amused smile had softened ever so slightly, curiosity shining in his gaze. Emma nodded almost imperceptibly, and then she began. She spoke the words slowly at first. The ancient poem was about gratitude and the humble work of caring for others, the harvest of life that comes from small acts of kindness. As she pronounced each line, her voice grew stronger. The loops and curls of the script seemed to transform into simple English sentences that floated in the air. In golden fields where grain bows low, she said, we find our strength in gentle deeds. Her words sounded beautiful even to her own ears. Victor rose to his feet, stunned. The diners leaned forward, mouths open in surprise. Emma finished the final line, and a moment of silence hung between them. Then the room erupted in applause. Emma felt warmth rush to her cheeks. She had done it. She had translated the impossible. Victor walked around the table and offered his hand. Emma accepted, still breathless. He pulled a checkbook from his pocket and scribbled an amount. She recognized the sum at once. It matched his monthly salary. I slid the check across the table. Emma looked at it, then back at him. Shh, she said softly, I can't take all of this. The laughter had gone from his eyes, replaced by respect. He shook his head. You've earned every penny, he said. Promise me you'll let me give it to you. Emma hesitated but saw the genuine admiration in his face. Still, she knew the money could help more than just her. Oh. Will you consider donating part of it to the city shelter? She asked. They need help this season. Victor paused, then smiled again. That's the best translation I've ever heard, he said. Deal. The guests cheered again. Emma felt a glow in her chest, not just from the money, but from the chance to do good. She gathered the check and tucked it safely into her apron pocket. Victor returned to his seat, and Emma left him to his meal. Later, as she wiped down tables, she glanced toward the corner. Victor was watching her, a new look of admiration on his face. Emma felt a sense of wonder at how a simple act of learning had changed her life in a single moment. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and smiled to herself, knowing this night would stay with her forever. Emma returned to Victor's table with his main course, her pulse still racing from the earlier translation. She placed the plate before him with a small, polite nod. Victor looked up, his eyes bright with curiosity. He cut a piece of steak, paused mid-bite, and wiped his mouth with a napkin. You have a gift, he said softly. Emma smiled, but said nothing. She knew better than to boast. As she moved back toward the other tables, her mind replayed the poem's lines. The words still rang in her ears. In golden fields where grain bows low, we find our strength in gentle deeds. She felt proud, but also nervous. The room had buzzed with excitement, but now that anticipation had shifted. Guests whispered in corners, stealing glances at Emma as she served wine and salad. When she came to refill Victor's water glass, she saw him studying the slip of parchment again. He smoothed one corner, as if remembering its origin. Emma froze. For a moment, afraid he might change his mind. But instead, he caught her eye and gave a small thumbs up. Relief washed over her. She realized he was not just an eccentric CEO. He was a man intrigued by what he did not know. Later, as Emma took orders from other guests, she noticed Victor's table still held the paper. It stood out among the usual plates and bread baskets. She wondered where that parchment had come from. Was it something he found during his travels? Or did it belong to a private collection? The mystery deepened her interest in him beyond the salary wager. After clearing a plate of dessert crumbs, Emma checked the clock. Her shift still had 2 hours to go. She felt tired, but tonight's events gave her extra energy. She glanced at a family celebrating a birthday at one corner table. Their laughter filled the air. Emma poured them another round of sparkling cider. In this cheerful scene, she felt grounded despite the high-stakes challenge she had just met. Back at Victor's table, she witnessed him signaling to the manager. The manager approached, looking curious and slightly anxious. Emma listened quietly as Victor asked for a moment to speak alone. The manager nodded, checked his watch, and walked toward the kitchen, leaving Emma standing by the table. She felt a flutter in her stomach, unsure what would come next. Victor leaned forward. Emma, he began, his tone serious now. I want to know more about you. Emma blinked in surprise. She had expected him to walk away once he'd claimed his prize. Instead, he offered genuine interest. She felt both honored and uneasy. She balanced a tray in one hand and swallowed hard. "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice calm but soft. "I hear you're studying languages," Victor said, folding his hands on the table. "What else do you know?" Emma thought of her nights at the library, memorizing alphabets and studying grammar books. She nodded. "I love words," she said. "I spend hours reading about old languages." Victor's eyes lit up. He scribbled something on a napkin and slid it across to her, a series of words in the same script she had just translated. Heart pounded. This time, it was a simple phrase: "Thank you." She recognized the drop-shaped symbol in the curved loop. She smiled and wrote the English phrase on the back of the napkin. Victor read it, nodded, and placed the translation on top of the original. "Excellent," he said. "Tap the table twice. You'll help me at my conference next week. Translate for me then." Emma's surprise turned to joy. She felt as if the world had widened before her. The chance to travel, to stand on a stage and speak for a man as important as Victor Reinhardt, it seemed impossible. Her voice steady. "I would be honored," she said. Victor stood and offered his hand, which she shook. His grip was firm, yet kind. That night, Emma's co-workers gathered near the kitchen door, whispering excited comments. One of them tapped her shoulder and said, "You're lucky, Emma. He doesn't do this for just anyone." Emma managed a shy smile. She wiped her hands on her apron, trying to look normal despite her racing thoughts. She felt a new sense of purpose. As the bistro's lights dimmed to signal closing time, Emma helped clear the tables. The final guests had long since left, and the staff wiped down counters together. Emma's friend Lily handed her a steaming cup of coffee. "You earned this," Lily said. Emma accepted the cup gratefully. She sipped slowly, savoring the warmth. Victor approached the bar where Emma and Lily stood. He held the check he had. "Written earlier, Emma," he said, his voice low. "I meant what I said. Keep this." He slid the check across the counter. Emma's hands trembled as she picked it up. "But I only need part for tuition," she reminded him. Victor nodded. "I'll trust you," he said, stepping closer. "Use what you need. The rest is for your cause." Emma felt tears well up, not from sadness, but from gratitude. She looked around at her co-workers, at the walls lined with pictures of happy diners, at the soft glow of the lamps overhead. Tonight she had stood between ordinary life and an extraordinary opportunity. When the staff turned off the last light and locked the doors, Emma and Lily walked into the cool night air. Lily chattered excitedly about the conference trip and the stories Emma would tell when she returned. Emma listened, feeling a sweet exhaustion. Her thoughts drifted to her mother at home, resting after a long day. She held the check carefully in her pocket. They parted at the corner where Lily's car waited. Emma waved goodbye and headed down the quiet street toward home.
Ow.
The stars sparkled overhead, and in her heart Emma felt a glow that matched their light. She thought of the days ahead, preparing for a big event, translating speeches, raising money for the shelter. A smile spread across her face. She reached her apartment and unlocked the door. Her mother slept in the living room, the glow of the television showing a silent cooking show. Emma tiptoed in, set the coffee cup on the table, and kissed her mother's forehead. She bent down and whispered, "Everything's going to be okay." Emma left the check on the desk, next to her stack of textbooks and language notes. She turned off the living room light and climbed the stairs to her small bedroom. Lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening. The hush in the restaurant, the laughter of Victor Reinhardt, the way the ancient words had flowed through her. Emma felt tired but happy. She knew tomorrow would bring work, classes, and the usual challenges of life. But after tonight, nothing would ever feel quite ordinary again. She drifted off to sleep with her mind full of possibilities, ready for the next chapter of her unexpected journey. Emma felt her pulse quicken as she leaned over the small table and let her eyes follow each familiar curve of the ancient script. The hush in the bistro was so complete that she could almost hear her own heartbeat. She pressed her lips together for a moment, then began to speak. Her voice was calm and even, as if she were telling a simple story rather than translating a centuries-old poem. She spoke each word clearly in distant hills where quiet rivers flow. The humble hand that tends the seed shall know the strength of gentle grace. As she moved on to the next lines, her confidence grew. The strange symbols seemed to fall into place, each loop and line turning into plain English words that spoke of kindness, service, and quiet courage. She realized with a soft thrill that the poem mirrored her own life, her days spent caring for her mother, her long nights studying by lamplight. In every small act she performed at Bella's table, her voice carried through the room, soft but sure, painting pictures of golden harvests and simple truths. When she spoke the final words, and in each giving heart, the world finds peace, a single breath seemed to echo between the walls. The candles on each table flickered in. The silence, and even the clatter of dishes in the kitchen, paused for an instant. Emma held her gaze on Victor Reinhardt, whose usual smirk had vanished. His eyes were wide, and for once, the laughter that so often followed him was absent. The entire room felt as if it were leaning forward, waiting for his next move. A faint murmur spread among the diners. People looked at one another, their expressions full of wonder. Some whispered, "Did she really just do that?" Others shook their heads as if to clear disbelief. Emma felt a warm flush of pride, but she kept her shoulders relaxed and her hands still. She knew that self-control now would show more strength than any triumphant gesture. She looked again at the parchment, now a simple piece of paper in her hands, and placed it gently on the table. Victor rose slowly from his chair, drawing the eyes of every guest in the bistro. He stepped around the table, his polished shoes making soft taps on the wooden floor. He reached into his pocket and drew out a sleek leather checkbook. Emma looked up at him, her breath caught in her throat. The room filled with quiet excitement. Victor flipped open to a fresh page, pulled a pen from his breast pocket, and began to write. Emma watched each stroke of ink, her heart fluttering like a bird in a cage. When Victor finished, he tore the check free and placed it squarely in front of Emma. She recognized the bold numbers at once. $10,000. It was exactly what he had promised his full monthly salary. A low gasp rippled through the guests. Emma's mind raced. $10,000 could change her life, could cover her college tuition, her mother's medicine, maybe even the rent on an apartment close to campus. But it was so much more than she had ever dreamed of. She took a steadying breath and looked Victor in the eye. Her voice was gentle as she spoke. "Sir," she said, "I am honored by your offer, but I cannot accept all of this." She placed a hand beside the check as if to hold back its full value. The room fell silent again. Emma felt the weight of every gaze. She remembered the faces of the people who came to Bella's table hungry, the families who quietly thanked her for a warm meal. She thought of the shelter across town, where men and women slept on hard benches and begged for kindness. Victor's brow furrowed for a heartbeat, then he relaxed, nodding slowly. Emma saw admiration in his eyes. She continued, her words as clear as the translation she had just given. "I will accept what I need for my studies. The rest, I would like to give to those who need it more." She did not mention names or numbers. She simply offered the balance of the check to a cause beyond herself. A soft murmur of approval swept through the bistro.
Ow.
Victor leaned forward, tapping the table lightly. "Your grace is as rare as your gift for languages," he said. "You have my respect, Emma Clark." He reached across and gathered the check into his hand again, tore a smaller portion of it, the sum she truly needed, and slid it back to her. The larger part he tucked back into his checkbook. Emma accepted the smaller check with a quiet nod. Her eyes shone as she placed it carefully in her apron pocket. She met Victor's gaze one more time, a bond formed by that simple exchange. Around them, the diners returned to their meals with new warmth in their hearts, as if they, too, had learned something powerful about generosity. Emma stepped back to let Victor resume his dinner. Her legs felt weak, but her spirit felt strong. She had not only translated a poem, she had shown what it meant to live by its message. She whispered a soft thank you and moved away, ready to finish her shift. As she refilled wine glasses and cleared plates, she carried with her a sense of wonder. In one moment, she had bridged worlds of language, money, and kindness and found that her own simple life held more meaning than any salary could buy. Emma stood by Victor's table, her heart still pounding from the translation she had just completed. The warm glow of the bistro lights rested on the polished wood, and soft music from the speakers drifted through the air. Emma watched Victor's face, reading the surprise and respect that replaced his earlier amusement. He folded his hands and studied her quietly, waiting for her answer about the check he had offered. She drew a gentle breath and placed her hand on the smaller check he had torn off for her. The ink glistened in the light. Emma met his gaze and spoke in a calm voice. "Thank you, sir, for keeping your word," she began. "I am very grateful. I will use this part for my tuition, but the rest—" She paused, steadying herself. Feeling every eye in the room turn toward them again, she continued. "The rest I want to give to the city's shelter on Maple Street. They help people without homes, and they need support this winter." A hush fell over the diners as Emma spoke. Even the clink of silverware on plates softened. Victor's brow rose, and he leaned forward. No one had expected her to refuse any of his money, much less ask him to share it with others. Emma held her head high, her eyes bright but steady. She thought of the small family she had served earlier in the evening. She thought of her own mother, whose illness had taught her how kindness could ease pain. In that moment, Emma felt proud of her choice. Victor studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled slowly, a genuine warm smile. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out the original check. He laid it on the table between them. "Emma Clark," he said in a low voice, "I lost a bet to you tonight, and you taught me something I did not expect. Generosity and humility matter as much as talent." He tapped the check gently. "The smaller amount is yours. But I admire your spirit so much that I want to help you make the shelter donation more substantial." Emma blinked, surprised by his words. She pictured the shelter staff receiving the news, their faces lighting up at the thought of extra funds. But she also felt a twinge of worry. She did not want to appear greedy or ungrateful. She swallowed and said softly, "Sir, you've already been kind enough. I would not ask for more." Victor shook his head, folding his arms as he smiled. "You asked for what you felt was right. It shows strength, not weakness. Let me match your gift with an equal one. Think of it as a way to reach more people in need."
Ow.
Emma saw warmth in his eyes. She realized he was serious about helping the shelter, not just rewarding her. For a moment, Emma hesitated, then nodded. "I accept your offer," she replied. "Together, we can help many more." Instantly, the room brightened with soft murmurs of approval. Emma felt a wave of relief and joy. She had not only honored her own needs, but also stood up for others who had less. That act, she knew, was worth more than any salary. Victor directed the restaurant manager to arrange the donation. Within minutes, the manager confirmed the details of the shelter's account. Emma felt proud as she watched him speak in hushed, respectful tones. She realized that her simple choice had inspired others around the table to act with kindness. The diners, who had arrived as strangers to the CEO's wager, now felt united by Emma's generosity. As the manager left to finalize the plan, Victor turned back to Emma. He offered his hand again. "Emma, you have a rare gift for languages and for your heart. I want to give you another opportunity." Emma straightened, curiosity shining in her eyes. Victor continued, "Next week, I have an international conference in Tokyo. I would like you to serve as my interpreter. You will stand on stage next to me and translate my speech into English for guests from all over the world." A thrill of excitement ran through Emma. The thought of traveling to Tokyo, speaking before a large audience, filled her with wonder. She pictured herself standing at a podium, her voice clear and strong as she translated every word. She thought of her textbooks and notes, the hours spent learning scripts that few people ever cared to read. All that practice had prepared her. For this moment, Emma felt her cheeks warm as she gulped. "Sir, I would be honored," she managed to say. "It will be a life-changing experience." Victor's smile widened. He nodded approvingly. "I'll have my assistant send you the details tonight," he said. Dress warmly. Tokyo can be cold this time of year, but I know you'll rise to the challenge." Overhead lights reflected. In Emma's eyes, as she accepted his business card, she tucked it carefully into her apron pocket. Around them, the restaurant regained its normal rhythm. Servers refilled wine, cleared plates, and comforted curious guests. But Emma felt as though she floated above the activity, her mind spinning with plans and possibilities. When her next table call sounded, Emma excused herself. She offered Victor a small bow and retreated to the bar. Her hand shook slightly as she refilled glasses, but her spirit felt steady. Lily, who had been watching from the side, rushed over with a bright grin. "Tell me everything," she whispered as Emma passed by. Emma winked. "Later," she said. "I have a lot to think about." By the time the bistro dimmed its lights to signal closing, Emma had settled her final check and counted tips at the register. Her coworkers offered hugs and congratulations. One of them teased, "Look at you, shelter benefactor and soon-to-be world traveler." Emma laughed softly, the sound full of happiness. She packed her bag, making space for books and warm clothes. Outside, the evening air was crisp. Emma walked through quiet streets toward home, the city lights guiding her way. She thought of her mother waiting for her and of the shelter volunteers who had received the check. She thought of the conference in Tokyo and the chance to stand on stage with Victor Reinhardt. In her mind, she rehearsed phrases in her favorite script, testing how they felt on her tongue. As Emma climbed the steps to her apartment, she felt a sense of calm determination. She had stepped beyond her ordinary life, but she would remain true to herself. She carried the same kindness and humility that guided her every day. That was the real secret she offered the world. With a soft smile, she unlocked the door and entered her living room. The television glowed with muted scenes of a cooking show, and the scent of her mother's soup lingered in the air. Emma set her bag down and kissed her mother's forehead, whispering, "I have good news." Her mother stirred, opening her eyes wide. Emma sat beside her, careful not to wake any pain from her mother's worn body. She described the wager, the translation, the donation, and now the conference. Her mother's face lit up with pride and wonder. Later, as Emma lay in bed, she held Victor's business card in her hand. The paper felt like a promise of new horizons. She thought about the next part of her journey, the chance to help others, to learn, and to grow. Emma closed her eyes and drifted into sleep, her dreams filled with the soft echo of ancient verses and the bright lights of a stage in Tokyo. She felt ready to meet whatever came next, guided by the simple belief that kindness and courage could change lives one word at a time. Emma woke early the morning after the conference, sunlight brushing her curtains in a soft glow. She lay still for a moment, thinking of the day before standing on the big stage in Tokyo. Her voice clear as she translated Victor Reinhardt's speech to an audience of CEOs, diplomats, and scholars. She remembered the hush that fell over the hall when she spoke the first sentence, and then the gentle murmur of approval that rose as she finished. Her heart swelled with pride, but also with a humble joy, knowing she had honored her promise to help others. She dressed quickly in the simple blue dress she had chosen for the event. The fabric was light and flowed around her as she moved. She felt the weight of Victor's business card in her pocket, a small reminder of the chance he had given her. Emma made her bed, folded her clothes, and quietly crept out of her tiny apartment so as not to wake her mother. In the kitchen, she left a note on the table. "Mom, big news. Check it later. Love, Emma." Then she stepped into the morning air, her mind alive with the possibilities ahead. At the local paper's office, Emma met the reporter who had flown in from London just for the story. He greeted her with a warm smile and led her to a small room, where cameras and lights were set up. They filmed her sharing the tale of the wager, the translation, and the shelter donation. Emma spoke directly to the camera, her words honest and clear. "I never imagined that a single poem could change my life," she said. "But it did because I changed the way I used what I learned." After the interview, the crew thanked her and promised to send the link. Emma stepped outside, her cheeks tingling from the sudden buzz of attention. By midday, the story had spread across social media. Her mother called, her voice thick with emotion. "Emma, I saw you on the screen." You were amazing. Emma laughed softly. I was nervous, she admitted. But I thought of you and of the shelter, and that gave me strength. Her mother sighed with pride. You have always had that strength, she said. You just needed the chance to show it. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She promised to come home early for lunch and then hung up. That afternoon, the city shelter on Maple Street held a small ceremony. Volunteers and staff gathered in the chilly sunlight, their breath rising in white clouds as they waited. Emma arrived with the matched donation from Victor Reinhardt's foundation. The manager of the shelter hugged her warmly. This will feed hundreds of people this winter, he said. You have made a real difference. Emma smiled at the rows of coats and blankets behind him, imagining every dollar stretching to cover warmth and food. She felt grateful to have shared the gift of kindness. Back in the city, Emma found a letter from the university she hoped to attend. She sank onto her couch, clutching the letter with shaking hands. Her dream of studying ancient languages and literature was coming true. She thought of the nights spent at the library, the hours of practice, the simple joy of learning. All of it had led to this moment. Emma closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." That evening, Emma sat with Victor Reinhardt at a small cafe. Near the conference center, he ordered green tea, and she chose a fruit tart. They talked about the next steps, formalizing her role as his interpreter, planning visits to his company's overseas offices, and starting a foundation to support language education for underprivileged youth. Emma listened, her heart racing. With excitement, she realized she was no longer just a waitress. She had become a bridge between worlds, using her gift to open doors for herself and for others. When they parted, Victor pressed a small envelope into her hand. "Don't open this until you're home," he said with a wink. Emma nodded, curiosity flickering in her chest. She stepped into the night air of Tokyo, the city's bright lights reflecting in her eyes. She rode the train back to her hotel room, the envelope heavy in her pocket. Arriving at her door, she peeled it open. Inside was a plane ticket home to her college town, so she could begin her studies with the scholarship she had earned. Alongside it was a simple note for the next chapter. Emma's smile was as bright as the neon skyline outside. The next morning, Emma flew home. She sat by the window, clouds drifting below her like tufts of cotton. She thought of her mother, waiting at the airport, of the shelter volunteers she would visit again, of the university community ready to welcome her. She had stepped into a world she once dreamed of, yet she remained grounded by the same values that guided her life: kindness, humility, and the gentle strength found in small deeds. When the plane touched down, Emma spotted her mother holding a bouquet of daisies. Her face lit up with joy. Emma ran into her arms, and they embraced. "I'm home," she whispered, "and I have so much to share." As they drove back to their neighborhood, Emma watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. She felt a new story unfolding before her, a story of learning, of giving, and of the unexpected turn that one translation had brought. In that moment, Emma knew that her life's true journey had only just begun.